The Minnesota Timberwolves are headed to the Western Conference Finals. Say it with me, for the first time in 20 years. This is the post-game podcast. We'll talk about how it happened. And yes, it was the defense that keyed this effort for the Wolves, once again, holding Denver to 90 points. But the defense that turned into offense for the Wolves as they built their second half lead. We'll talk about all the stars for the game for Minnesota in a true team effort. It's all upcoming on the show. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Happy Monday, everybody, and it is the happiest of Mondays. The Timberwolves are headed to the Western Conference Finals. Yes, 20 years to the day of the Game 7 win over the Kings in the second round that sent the Wolves to the Western Conference Finals 20 years ago. Also, of course, Kevin Garnett's birthday. This is easily the best calendar day for Timberwolves fans, right? Like in the history of calendar days of Wolves fans. Not that there's anything else that could even possibly rival it other than it is Kevin Garnett's birthday. So yeah, that's it, right? It's May 19th for all of time until the Wolves win their first title, which hopefully will be in just a few weeks here. I don't know. I mean, there's so much to cover on the show today. Obviously, the biggest Game 7 comeback in a win in NBA playoffs history, or I should say the biggest halftime deficit Game 7 in history, I guess, technically. We'll talk about the defense. We'll talk about Ant's performance, even though the shooting wasn't great. He was awesome. Jaden, Kat, Rudy, Naz Reid, Mike Conley with big moments. Like across the board, everyone contributed in this game, and there's a lot to get to today. And, of course, playing the Mavs on Wednesday, and that'll be Tuesday's show, Wednesday's show, setting you up for the Mavs series. We'll do a crossover with Locked On Mavericks. Lots to get to later in the week. It's coming fast and furious now, by the way. In this next series, it's every other day. There's no 2-day breaks in between games. So lot to get to here this week. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves, and also, of course, at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. All right. Let's start here. So the Wolves had the biggest halftime deficit comeback in a win in a Game 7 of NBA playoffs history, down 15 at halftime, down 20 just a couple of minutes into the third quarter. And it was like right after a possession with, I think it was after the possession where Ant threw it to Rudy on a fast break for no reason at all. And Rudy, of course, missed a weird runner. And then Jamal Murray hits a left corner three, and it's a 58-38 game. What killed the Wolves to that point, and I want to dwell on this because there's too much good to talk about, but the game completely flipped on its head midway through the third quarter. And what happened in the first half was the Wolves were getting killed on the glass. They were getting killed in the paint. There was no flow to the offense. Ant was not making decisions quickly enough. He was basically just staring at the double, waiting for the double to come, and then passing out of it, but not quick enough so that Denver couldn't rotate, so that Denver couldn't at least get up a decent contest. And then to compound matters, the role players were all missing open three-pointers. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was a primary culprit. Jaden missed some threes early. Mike Conley missed some shots early. Ant himself, when he did squeeze the trigger, was missing shots early. And then they were trying to force the ball to Rudy to take advantage of Denver just saying, hey, we can guard him with anybody we want. And in the first half, that didn't work. Now, all of those things pretty much got flipped on their head in the second half. Before I go any further, I do want to say this is interesting. I think of this as like this game was basically a microcosm of this series, where you had one team jumping out to a big lead, and then you still ended up having an incredible game later in the game between two heavyweights just throwing punches and Jokic making shots on one end and Jamal Murray having a great first half and Ant being really quiet. And then you get an entire team win for Minnesota. And then for Denver, it's two guys and then nobody else. I mean, they scored 90 points. 69 of their points were scored by Jokic and Murray. Nobody else on their team scored more than 7 points. Think about that. 69 of 90 points, which is what? I don't know. What's the quick math on that? 65%? Wait, that's bad math. Whatever it is, it's a lot of their. I'm going to do the math really quick because it's going to bother me now. Yeah, it's close. 77% of their points were scored by Murray and Jokic. And for the Wolves, they had 2 leading scorers tied with 23. They had 6 of 8 players that played in this game score in double figures, and 6 of the 7 players that played more than 4 minutes. Kyle Anderson only played 4 minutes in this game. 6 of the 7 players that played more than 4 minutes for Minnesota scored in double figures in this game. And Denver only had 2 guys that scored more than 7 points. I mean, it was truly like it gets thrown around team effort. Like, obviously, anytime you win it on some level is a team effort, right? You can't literally win a game by yourself. But this was a through and through team effort. Nobody on the Wolves had a plus minus that was greater than plus 14. Naz somehow had a weird minus, but everyone in the starting lineup was between a plus 10 and a plus 14. Naz was somehow a minus 5 in his 22 minutes, although I thought he played great. We'll talk more about Naz later. This was incredible. I mean, everything I just mentioned that went wrong in the first half. And I didn't mention Jamal Murray going nuts, but I should, because Jamal Murray went nuts while Ant was off and not doing a great job defensively, frankly. I didn't think Ant was very good in the first half defensively. He wasn't good on either side of the floor. But then in the second half, when they got down 58-38, less than 2 minutes into the third quarter, things completely just flipped. And it started with the defense. Ant started locking up Jamal Murray. I don't know why it suddenly happened, but it did. He started locking up Jamal Murray. The Wolves started jumping passing lanes. There was just generally more activity. Rudy was all over the place. And it led to some transition scores, some easy looks, a couple of dunks in transition. Ant had a couple pickpockets. There were ultimately some threes that was more in the fourth quarter that got some open threes. And so it was slowing down Jamal Murray. And then it was also locking down on anytime the Nuggets did get a shot up, the Wolves were not allowing second chance opportunities. Overall for the game, Denver had 11 offensive rebounds, and I believe 8 of them, maybe 7 of them, were in the first half. Certainly about 3/4 of their offensive rebounds were in the first half. The Wolves ended up actually being a +3 on the glass on the night, and even with the Nuggets in offensive rebounds for the game after getting just destroyed on the glass in the first half. So that flipped. No second chance points for Denver. Ant locked up Jamal Murray starting in the third quarter. The Wolves found a little bit of offensive flow, and again, that started with the transition opportunities. And then Ant started decision-making quicker, and they got the ball to Cat more continuously. And Cat was really the only thing that kept them afloat offensively in the first half, to the point where late in the second quarter, when Minnesota was kind of like hovering around that 10-point deficit, I thought there were a couple shots Cat passed up on that he should have pulled the trigger on. They would have been quick trigger threes, a couple feet beyond the arc, but those are shots Cat's got a quick trigger. He likes to squeeze the trigger on those and get the ball out of his hands, and he doesn't need to load up to make those shots. But he was, swinging the ball. He wasn't taking those shots, but he was their only real offense in the first half. And then he started punishing these smaller when they tried to guard him with Christian Braun, or they tried to guard him with, I guess it was often Christian Braun, occasionally Jamal Murray. Like, these guys can't guard Karl-Anthony Towns. So he was taking them into the post and scoring on them. He had a couple of tough fadeaways. He hit a couple of jump hooks. He obviously hit a couple of threes. He was doing it in every which way. And that was partly, the Wolves offense just getting into a flow finally. And Ant started playing better. Those threes started falling as the game wore on. And again, it all started with the defense. I want to talk about some pivotal moments in the second half that I would point to and say, these are the moments that stick out in my mind. And I want to talk about some individual performances. And there's, like I already said, 6 of the 7 guys that played more than 4 minutes scored in double figures. And I kind of got to spend time on every single one of them. This was a true, and you got, if you listen to this podcast regularly, I don't usually just like talk about every player individually and like, it's a team win, everybody. Like, that's not usually how this works. There's usually studs and there's duds and there's guys ahead. But like, I mean, everybody contributed truly to this win. So I want to spend time on what stuck out from everybody's performance in this game. Lots to get to here still upcoming on the show today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investment and retirement accounts in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your views from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They're the number one finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. The number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Today's episode is also brought to us by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's number one fantasy sports app with more than 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more than or less than on 2 or more player stats and watch your winnings roll in. Get in on the playoff action, win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. We are now entering the conference finals. Of course, Pacers, Celtics on one side of the bracket, Wolves, Mavs on the other. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball and hockey entries today on Prize Picks. Again, America's number one fantasy sports app. Also, Prize Picks offers injury insurance, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets hurt. For basketball games, if you have a player who exits in the first half and does not return in the second, Prize Picks will have your back and not count that as a loss. Download the app today and use the code LOCKDOWNNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, code LOCKDOWNNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Do you watch Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? If you do, no doubt you have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting. Instead, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, let's talk about some of the pivotal moments in the second half of this one as the Wolves staged their comeback. The first one for me, and like, to be clear, I mean, I'm just like, I'm picking a handful. There's obviously multiple moments. The third quarter, I mean, like, Jaden hit a couple of big shots. Cat was awesome. I should note that the Wolves did an outstanding job getting the Nuggets in the penalty early in the third quarter. Yes, the Wolves attempted 30 free throws in this game. Denver attempted 14. That was because Denver decided to be overly aggressive with Rudy. They decided to try and guard him with smaller players, and Rudy was active. We have to credit Rudy Gobert for the activity level that he showed, especially in the second half. And, just making Denver put their hands on it, right? Making Denver try and corral him with smaller players because they were making the choice. And the Wolves, to their credit, weren't necessarily forcing the issue. Like, a lot of these fouls were away from the ball. Smaller guy grabbing Gobert down in the paint, trying to keep him from getting positioned or catching a lob. But the Wolves early in the game were trying to force passes to Rudy, and they didn't necessarily do that in the second half. They picked their spots in the right way. Denver was just too physical. And the Timberwolves did a really good job, again, of forcing the issue, or not forcing the issue. The Wolves did a really good job of involving Gobert enough that it was apparent that they were trying to impede him. And it got the Wolves into the bonus very quickly in the third quarter, very quickly in the fourth quarter. And Rudy, I talked about this on the Locked On NBA show today, actually on Monday, with Jackson Gatlin on Locked On NBA Today. Or I guess just the Locked On NBA show. I'm mixing two different show names. The gravity of Rudy Gobert was massive in this game. And I know that the line isn't like, it's not super sexy. It's not going to stand out. 13 points on 7 shots, 3 of 7 shooting, only 9 rebounds, 3 turnovers. He fouled out in 36 minutes, whatever. but the gravity of Rudy Gobert was massive in this game. And he was a massive reason why the Nuggets ended up in the penalty so quickly. And by the way, we'll talk more about Rudy later. He hit a ton of free throws down the stretch too. So all that to say, the first moment in the third quarter was the Nuggets getting into the penalty. I want to say it was like around the 8-minute mark, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was like with 7:48 left. I believe that was their 15 foul with the Wolves down 16. Cat hit a couple of free throws. Jaden hits a 3. Conley hits a 3. Towns hits another shot. Ant gets a dunk. I believe that was in transition. Now it's a 4-point game. And then at the end of the third quarter, with the Wolves down 4 after a pair of Jokic free throws on a Towns shooting foul, I believe that was the really difficult one. One of the really difficult ones. Now the Wolves are down 4, and Ant hits an impossible step back above the break on the left side of the floor over a double team at the buzzer, basically with 0.1 seconds left of the third quarter. Wolves pulled it within 1. They win the quarter 28-14. That's the first moment, other than the penalty, getting into the bonus stuff. Then early in the fourth quarter, the Wolves actually take a brief lead on Gobert hits a shot and gets fouled. It was kind of anticlimactic because it gave them a 1-point lead. Then he missed the free throw. So he missed the end one. The Wolves are up 1. The Nuggets take the Nuggets take the lead back over the next couple of minutes, or I should say tie the game. So now 10 minutes left in the game. It's a tie game. And Conley hits this really tough step back from the left wing, almost the same spot, I guess a little bit more towards the middle of the floor than Ant's buzzer beater. But Conley hits a tough shot with 9.5 minutes left that puts the Wolves back up by 3 right after the Nuggets had come back and tied the game. And then quickly on the other end, Jokic misses a shot. And that sequence felt so big in that moment. Like, if Conley's going to hit this step back, and then they come down a couple possessions later, Gobert hits a couple of free throws, Gobert and Jokic trade shots. And then, Jokic hits a couple of those threes, but it never really felt. After Conley hit that 3, there was just, I don't want to say a level of comfort because it was still a 1-possession game, but that's when it was like, okay, they withstood the first pushback from Denver. Then things are back and forth for a little while in the fourth, and you get a little bit deeper, and Karl-Anthony Towns picks up his 5th foul. And that was at the, let's see if I can pull the exact time when that was. That was at the, let's see, where did it go? Shortly after that. At the 6th, is that right? No, that was his 4th foul. Karl-Anthony Towns picked up his 5th foul at the, no, that was it. Like right around the 6-minute mark. Yeah, at 6:21. Karl-Anthony Towns comes out of the game with 5 fouls. And the Wolves are up by 5. Naz comes in and is fantastic on both ends of the floor. Basically, right after he comes in, Naz blocks Jokic's, like immediately, blocks a jump hook from Jokic. Wolves come back the other way. Edwards gets hacked across the arms. Ball goes out of bounds. They don't call the foul. It was the worst no call of the game. Really bad. And then Gobert immediately commits an offensive foul. Jamal Murray scores on the other end. Now it's a 3-point game again. Naz comes down and he scores. And now the Wolves are right back up 5. Then a couple possessions later, he gets fouled, makes both free throws. The Wolves are back up by 5. Then Naz blocks Jokic again for the second time in about a 3-minute span. Ant misses a shot. Naz gets the offensive rebound and the putback slam. Remember the tip dunk coming from the baseline. Puts the Wolves up 7 with 3.5 minutes left. That leads right into Conley stealing the ball from Murray and Ant hitting a 3 in transition. Or that was the one. That was actually the one where, Conley steals the ball, passes it to Naz, who's basically at the free throw line. Naz takes a step and a half, kicks it to Ant in the corner. Ant knocks it down, puts the Wolves up 10 with over 3 to go, and that's basically the dagger. So that whole sequence is spurred by Naz, blocking Jokic twice, knocking down, I think, 2, maybe 4 free throws, the tip slam mixed in there, another bucket in the paint, just a flurry. Naz Reid is the best player on the floor for about 4 minutes on a floor that included Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Anthony Edwards. Naz Reid dominated that stretch. And that was, that to me, that was kind of the final, like that 3-pointer from Ant coming off of the Naz flurry was kind of the dagger in a sense. I also want to shout out, I guess this kind of, moves into the discussing the best, individual efforts in this game, but Rudy Gobert, like, let's just circle back to him really quickly because I'll do studs and duds here at the end. So I don't necessarily think that Rudy will be part of that. But I have to shout out because of how bad Rudy was. He was so bad in the first half, and I actually don't think he was. I shouldn't say that. The perception was he was so bad in the first half that Charles Barkley's out on TNT at halftime saying they should take him out of the game. Bill Simmons is tweeting he's right. They should take him out of the game. People are saying like Rudy's the problem here. And what does Rudy do? He comes out in the second half, uses his gravity to get the Wolves into the bonus very quickly. And then he goes 7 of 9 on free throws. And down the stretch, hits free throws. And plays solid defense mixed in with Naz there. Once Cat leaves with the 5th foul. Just like making those free throws when the Nuggets are like, all right, we're fine with fouling Rudy Gobert. Rudy's back to making free throws again. He just is. Like when he got fouled shortly after, actually it was when Towns left the game. The Wolves were only up by 3, and then Gobert hit both of those. That was it was a sideline out of bounds, and Gobert was trying to get to the basket, and Jokic grabbed him or trying to cut toward the basket. And the Wolves were only up 3, and then Gobert hits both free throws. And that was with like 5 minutes to play in the game. And those were his last free throws. But he was a big part of the Wolves kind of overtaking the Nuggets in the first place and building a lead in the first place. I want to do studs and duds. We'll talk a little more Naz, etc. And that's how we'll close the show here today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. And hot off the presses, the FanDuel line for Wednesday night, Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals in Minneapolis at Target Center is Minnesota -4 over Dallas. Incidentally, the Celtics in Game 1 on Tuesday are a -9 favorite over the Pacers. For the money line, the Wolves are -180 on Wednesday night. For the, I'm going to see if it has, let's see if they have the series odds. The Wolves are -180 to win the series. Remember, they were underdogs in both the Suns series and the Nuggets series. The Wolves are underdogs at the start of the series. They are favorites over Dallas, -180. Dallas is +146 to win the conference finals. Again, head over to FanDuel, $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, let's talk studs and duds. We got to start with Karl-Anthony Towns. Cat was phenomenal in this game. I already talked about his silly 5th foul. I don't need to say much else about it. There were a couple bad ones in there. I think it was his 4th foul where he got called for a foul on a Jokic turnaround that wasn't called a foul until the ball had already been rebounded by Minnesota, and it wasn't a foul. It was a bad call. But the 5th foul was a classic, once to twice a game, still in the playoffs. It's been on the perimeter. Cat gets a little slap happy and just starts waving his arms. Take that play out, and then the bad turnover in the final couple minutes where it allowed Denver to get to within, I think, 5 with about 45 seconds to play. Those were the only 2 bad plays I think he really had all night. He was the best player on the floor, other than maybe Jamal Murray in the first half of this game. Cat for the game, 23 and 12, 8 of 14 shooting. So 23 points on 14 shots, but he was only 1 of 6 on threes. He was 7 of 8. Say that again. Cat was 7 of 8 on 2-point attempts in this game. Was going to work in the post. Was active on the glass, had a couple of offensive rebounds, was a perfect 6 of 6 at the line. He added 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block, which was an incredible block, by the way, as the Wolves were just starting their comeback. I think it was third quarter. Or no, I guess that would have been second quarter. When the Wolves were trying to hang around in the second quarter. It was a crazy block. He really got up for it. The foul trouble, the couple of the turnovers were rough, but Cat was awesome. And the Wolves just flat out do not win this game if it's not for Karl-Anthony Towns. There's no question in my mind. His defense on Jokic was phenomenal. And think about what he's had to do. Defending Kevin Durant, and we talked about this a little bit a week ago, and the Wolves were up 2-0 in the series a little over a week ago. Going from defending Kevin Durant to defending Nikola Jokic, it doesn't get much more difficult and diverse in terms of offensive games than that. One of the best mid-range jump shooters, one of the best scorers of all time, a long, lanky, still athletic player who can score at all levels and still will take you off the dribble, to Nikola Jokic, who would much rather play with his back to the basket or face up and distribute and would prefer to pass, who you're only closing out to the touch on the perimeter. And sure enough, I mean, Cat and the Wolves forced Jokic to take 10 threes in this game. And he missed his first, I think he missed his first 7, maybe 8. And he finished 2 of 10 from outside the arc. Just a phenomenal two-way performance from Karl-Anthony Towns in this game. And I mean, obviously completely different assignment with Dallas that we'll talk about on Tuesday and Wednesday. But just such a good game from Karl-Anthony Towns. Such a mature performance. Jaden McDaniels is another easy stud in this game. 23 points. A very quiet 23 on 7 of 10 shooting. 3 of 4 outside the arc. 6 of 7 at the line. I believe TNT had this stat after the game. This is the first time in McDaniels' career he's had consecutive 20-point games, which surprised me a little. I know that they're generally few and far between, but he's had them, right? He was so quiet early in this game. He was scoreless in game 1, 5 points in game 2. Both wins, by the way. 10 points in a loss in game 3, 11 points in a loss in game 4, 9 points in a loss in game 5. He had 21 last game in the win, 23 in this one. 6 of 7 at the line. The last time that Jaden McDaniels shot more than 5 free throws in a game was March 19th, 2 months ago. Also, by the way, against Denver. He was 4 of 7 at the line. What did I say? He was 6 of 7 in this game? And actually, I'm just scrolling through his game log. There were only 2 games all year that Jaden McDaniels attempted more than 5 free throws, and it was this game. He attempted 6 in a game against Portland. Still, only twice all year did he attempt 7 free throws in a game. One was game 7 against Denver in the second round of the playoffs, and the other was March 19th against Denver. The only other time he had more than 5 attempts was he had 6 against Portland on March 4th. It shows, it goes back to the activity level. And his offensive rebounding was so big against Phoenix that it kind of disappeared early in the series. He was more active in this game. He had 6 total boards. He which, by the way, 4 of them were offensive rebounds. Far more active in this game. Knocked down the corner threes when they had the opportunity. And he's so much more comfortable from the corners than he is above the break in terms of jump shots. But just a really good all-around game. Great defense. Jaden was awesome. I mean, you could argue either Jaden or Cat as player of the game for the Wolves, and I would not fault you one bit. My third stud, you could go Naz. I'm going to go Anthony Edwards because even though the 16 on 24 is not efficient, tell you what, 8 rebounds, 7 assists to only 1 turnover. Denver's entire defensive game plan was centered on only stopping Anthony Edwards. To make matters worse, Ant never found his rhythm when he was open. And as slow as the decision-making was early, it was almost impeccable in the second half of the game. At least, midway through the third quarter toward the end of the game. He did hit the dagger 3 in the right corner we talked about after the Conley steal. He hit the buzzer-beating 3. Those were the only 2 threes he made in this game, by the way. He missed all the other open ones that he had, and he did have a few. He hit the buzzer beater in the third quarter. He hit the dagger with 3 minutes left to put them up 10 in the fourth. He missed his other 8 3-point attempts in this game. He only got to the line 2 times in a game in which the Wolves shot 30 free throws. Anthony Edwards only attempted 2 free throws. He was out of rhythm. He was out of sorts. But to come up with 7 assists and only 1 turnover, and it easily could have been 12, 13, 14 assists if his teammates had made open threes early. The Wolves ended up only shooting just 29% from outside the arc, 39% for the game, which is basically in line with what Denver did from the floor and from 3-2. Ant was really, 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 really good late in this game, decision-making wise. It's tough when teams load up on you like that and your teammates aren't making shots to keep making the right read. He had a couple where he nearly got to the rim. The one that he kicked, I think it was the Jaden 3 in the right corner where Michael Porter Jr. thought he'd shot the ball to the point where he went to block it and then looked up to see if he'd blocked the shot or to see if the shot was going in. And Ant hung in the air, kind of double clutched with one hand and threw it to the short corner, the strong side corner for a made bucket. One of Ant's better, he's had a lot of these games that had slow first halves, and the Wolves, there was a stat going around when he scores 5 or less in the first half. The Wolves were 7-1 in those games. And that was a mix of the team getting way up and him deferring the rest of the game, and then also him waking up, because that happens too. I was impressed with the decision-making. I was impressed with the defense. We talked about that. So it's the defense and it's the decision-making that get him to be the third stud. You can argue Naz, that's fine. I already said he was the best player on the floor for a 3 or 4 minute stretch. Better than Murray, better than Jokic, better than Ant during that stretch in the fourth quarter, no question. My only dud is Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He was 0 of 6 shooting, 0 of 5 outside the arc. And as hot as he was earlier in the playoffs, and even earlier in the series, things kind of spiraled for Nickeil as the series went on. He was 2 of 6 in the first game. Game 2, though, in that blowout when he had 14 points, 4 of 7 shooting, and then he missed 7 in a row over the next 2 games. And then game 5 at Denver when they fell down 3-2, he had 14 points, made 4 threes. Last game, he made 3 threes, but he didn't do much else in that game, and he saw his minutes go way down, which, in part was due to other guys not being in foul trouble, but he played 39 minutes in the loss in game 5, and he only played 17 in each of the last 2 games. Struggled in this game. Just couldn't make an open shot. I thought some of the shots he was taking, he should have swung the ball. Anything above the break for Nickeil right now, he's got to find a better rhythm in the corners. He only shot 32% for the series. And by the way, he also only shot 32%. That is right. He shot 32% against Phoenix from 3 and 32% against Denver. He had a couple of those really big games, right? Game 1 against Phoenix, and then game 2 against Denver stand out. But volume wise, it's been there. He just hasn't knocked down enough threes. So he's the only dud here in this one. All right. That's all I'm going to have today. I'm actually in the process of setting up the crossover Lockdown Mavs. We'll do that. It might even be tomorrow's show. It might be Tuesday's show. If it's not, it'll be Wednesday's show. Maybe it'll be 2 shows. I don't know yet. But we'll have tons of coverage Tuesday and Wednesday leading into Wednesday night's game 1, which is a 7:30 Central tip. Don't let TNT fool you with the 6:30 they're putting out there, because that's their pregame show. The tip is at 7:30 on TNT if you can't make it to Target Center. A reminder also, if you can't make it to Target Center, that and you can't watch it, you can listen on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Minnesota Timberwolves. You'll get Alan Horton and also Jim Peterson right now as a color commentator on for the playoffs. They're on Sirius, or I should say on the hometown broadcast, which you can hear on the SXM app on SiriusXM. Of course, we also do the postcast after every game. I believe it'll be Tyler Metcalf joining Luke Inman on Wednesday, so be sure to tune into that on Wednesday following Wolves Mavs Western Conference Finals game 1. Can't wait. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow with more getting you ready for Wolves Mavs. Tons to break down. I'm going to watch all 4 games against the Mavs. A lot has changed since we last saw Dallas, so we'll talk about all that here in the next couple of days. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon at Fire TV, and you can follow on X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, CKEN. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.